that have been here for the last year, we've been on this journey that I came up with about a year ago. I felt like there was something that I wanted to share with you that would take a while. And so what I did is I started to feel into that, and the word that just kept coming over and over and over again was this idea of the calling. And so for the last year, every quarter, there's been a new part of the calling. And this talk is going to be our last piece of that process, should you choose to accept the calling, right? So I'm going to share with you what I wrote when I originally started this that came to me, because for me, what the calling represented and what I honestly do believe is that we are always being called for something. It could be mentally, it could be physically, it could be spiritually, it could be emotionally. But there's always something. It's our soul's way of nudging us. It's kind of like this thing. Everybody know what I'm talking about? If you're alive and breathing, you know exactly what I'm talking about, okay? So there's something that's going on. And here's what I wrote. It's a longing for a deeper experience of self in one or more areas of your life. It may be asking you for something more or something less. It may ask you to learn something or let something go. It may require a big change or a small one. It may require a lot or a little. In truth, until you listen, you'll never know, because every calling is different. There is no one calling. There are several throughout our lives. And every calling is different for every single person. But no matter what, there's always a calling, and the key is to learn how to listen. There's a calling going on right now for each and every one of us. For some, there may be several. For some, there may only be one. For some, the calling may be really loud, and others, it may be really subtle and really quiet. But regardless of how many or how loud there are, you're being called right now. The only question is, what are you doing about your calling? Are you listening to it, or are you ignoring it? And so I wrote that a year ago as I started to put all this stuff together. In the last 9 months, we've gone through this journey, and there was different parts of it, right? And so we started off with this idea of sacred listening. In other words, we got to slow down enough to listen to what the calling is. And we talked about this idea that in unity, the silence is often thought to be the most important subject that unity teaches. It's the fundamental starting point. It's the most advanced of all unity teachings. I laughed about that because I thought to myself, how perfect is that the most advanced teaching contains absolutely not one word. Fillmore said, when we withdraw our attention from the outer world and place it upon inner things, we are meditating. In meditation, we come into touch with the invisible energies of God, and we become open to divine inspiration. And then we moved on down the trail, so we've listened, and then we talked about this idea of sacred discernment. What is sacred discernment? Well, when you start, back up. Sacred discernment, the ability to judge well. Why do we need to judge well? Well, I don't know about you, but sometimes it kind of looks like this to me. Right? We're so busy in our lives. There's so much information coming in. You're like, I think this sounds good, but I'm not sure. Is this good? Should I pay attention to this one? Should I follow this? What should I do? And so there's this whole smattering, if you will, of questions that are going on. And so when we dove into sacred discernment, what we talked about was this idea of intuition, so that we're able to recognize and discern divine guidance from simple human thought. Is there a difference between divine guidance and simple human thought? Do you think maybe, just maybe, there might be a little bit of a difference, right? And then finally, the last thing that we talked about in this process was, now that we've listened, have a pretty good idea, we've discerned, I think it's telling me I should be going this direction. Then it's time to do what? Take action, because what we talked about is sacred action is the action that's necessary in order to follow your calling. But then we also said what? What happens often is people do what? Nothing. They do nothing. Nothing will happen or change if you don't take any action. Fillmore said, in making your own demonstrations, work for the conviction in your own heart that you are a child of God, of course. Next, declare it in word and carry it out in the acts of your daily life. Take action, once you figure that out. And then I talked about these three things in terms of taking sacred action. Trust the how will come, take consistent action, and trust and relax. And that leads us to the final and the last piece of the calling, and that is sacred embodiment, right? So what is this idea or this thought of sacred embodiment in this process? Sacred embodiment is the process of embodying whatever the calling is for you until you become it. Until you become it. See, when you first start this thing, you're hanging out and it's like, oh, I think I should be doing this. But you're not that yet, right? And so what do? We go through this learning process and we start figuring out, what am I supposed to do? And you're supposed to go do all this stuff, although you're not necessarily 100% sure what exactly. But once you start down the path, like I said during the talk, the how will come, the what will come, everything will come to you, but you've got to start taking action. And you start doing all that. And then guess what? Eventually, you become it. It's a part of who and what you are. And so as you really think about it, it's you living and being in a new way. That's what sacred embodiment is. That's where the change really happens. In whatever area of your life the calling is going on. Because remember, the calling, it's asking you to change. That's the whole point. It's asking you to change. And so usually what that looks like is either adding something into your life, letting go of something, changing something, or a combination. So it's not necessarily one thing. It could be a combination of a bunch of things, right? And regardless of which one, you start to behave differently. In other words, you change. You change. Okay, I gotcha. So in order for that to happen, as I was studying, as I was preparing for this, the word that kept coming up for me is this idea of immersion. Immersion. And when I think about immersion, I start thinking about all the different ways or what it actually is. And so I looked up the definition. It's the act of immersing or the state of being immersed in something such as a language, culture, or water. And of course, one of the things I thought about is, how sometimes kids in college will go away for an immersion program. Well, they'll go live in a foreign country. Well, they'll learn about their culture, their language, and learn how to speak, right? Anybody here ever been? I know a few people have actually done immersion programs in college, right? And then I also thought the other one was, sometimes when people get baptized, they talk about, well, we were fully immersed in water. It's a big thing, I guess. Anyways, but you're immersed in the water. So here's the thing. It's immersion, and I think the reason it came up for me, and I kept thinking about it, is because it's an extremely powerful way for you to embody whatever it is that you're trying to change in your life, but it just happens a little bit faster. So my question is, why? Why do you think immersion is so powerful? I'm just curious. Does anybody have any thoughts or ideas about that? Anybody? You lose yourself. I love that. Thank you, Marcia. Yes. No other conflicting energies distracting you. Love it. There's no boundaries. Yeah, I love that. Thank you, Drew. Your own, say it again. You are all in. You're all in. Thank you, Ian. Yeah, you're all in. Yeah. So it just works. And I think when I thought about it, the thought that came through my mind was it's because you literally can't go back to the old way. You think about it in terms of the students going into a foreign country, right? Imagine if they show up there and they start speaking their known language. Is that going to work? Doesn't work. It doesn't work, right? Because nobody will understand them, right? In other words, the old way simply will not work. It won't. Got it. So this is the purpose of the story in the Bible when Jesus talks about putting new wine into old wineskins. So I'm just going to read that to you for those of you that are not familiar with this from the book of Luke. And he spoke also a parable unto them. No one should put a piece from a new garment and put it upon an old garment, else it would ruin the new. And also the piece from the new will not agree with the old. And no one should put a new wine into old wineskins, else the new wine will burst the skins, and itself will be spilled, and the skins will perish. But new wine must be put into fresh wineskins. And no one, having drunk the old wine, desires the new, for they say, The old is good. In other words, when you're in the old wine, when you're drinking the old wine, you're not going to like the taste of the new. You're not going to like it. So that's why Jesus said that. So of course, that's the parable, and that's what the story that Jesus told. We're going to do metaphysical interpretation, right? Because that's what we do here. So to make it really simple, Jesus' teaching is about putting new wine into old wineskins, symbolizes the need for inner transformation. And when it talks about the old and the new, it's the old thoughts versus the new thoughts or the new way of being, right? And it's doing that and saying that those old wineskins can't hold the new ones without bursting, without ruining them. And our old ways of thinking, our habits and attitudes, they won't be able to sustain the new growth that we're trying to accomplish, the new thing that we're trying to do. It can't do it. And you've got God that's trying to help us out, but it's like, hey, you can't keep putting the old thoughts, the old beliefs, the old patterns into this new way of being. It's not going to work. Ain't going to happen. And in order to receive this new change, if you will, this new calling, if you will, this new way of being, if you will, you must be willing to let some stuff go, to change, let go of the past, and embrace the new, the brand new, right? So in other words, what it means is whenever we decide to change something, it's not just an external change. How many times have you heard stories upon stories upon stories upon stories about people who decide, hey, I want to lose a few pounds. They go on a diet, and then guess what happens? Why do you think the majority of the time that never works? Because they never do the internal work. They don't. In other words, they try and force it, and then within a very short amount of time, they're back to where they were when they started. In some cases, worse, because now they feel like crap because they weren't able to pull it off. That's really what happens. And it's no difference. I could use 50 different examples of how that happens in our life. And it's like the inner work must be done with the outer work. They go hand in hand. You have to do one without the other. It's not going to work. You have to do them both, right? I was sharing my own little journey with you throughout the course of this and the changes I've made. And I talked about my longevity journey. And I was sharing with you, all of a sudden I decided, hey, maybe running marathons isn't a good long-term plan. And now that I'm hobbling up here and I'm no longer working, that doesn't sound like that was a bad thought. And so books started showing up, and I shared with some of the books, and I talked about all of a sudden, I have a friend of mine who joins me in this journey, and now the two of us are going back and forth with different ideas and everything else like that. And again, following the steps, what happened? I heard the calling. The calling was, hey, Mike, you're getting older. Running marathons isn't a good long-term strategy for longevity. You might want to think about that. Okay, great. What am I supposed to do? Books start showing up. So I'm starting to discern, right? I'm listening, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay. And then what do I start doing? Well, then, thank God, because my buddy's sitting there going, dude, you didn't work out yesterday? Dude, you didn't work out yesterday? Dude, you didn't work out yesterday. And just really in my stuff, because like I said, I wanted this. But thank God he was there. Because then guess what? I started to do what I needed to do. In other words, I started to change my workout routine. And guess what? Now I've embodied it. It's now a part of who and what I am. I'm never going back to not doing what I'm doing now in terms of the stuff I'm doing for my longevity. And I don't think this is any different when I look at my life and I look back at it and I think about the times when, I don't know, I came into Unity and they kept talking about meditating, and I sat down and I'm like, I cannot do this. Can't do it. How many people? Come on, be honest, raise your hands. I can't do it, right? It took me a while to do that. I couldn't do it. So finally, over time, I finally got the hang of it, and it started to stick, and it just took a while for it to kind of happen. And I don't think it's any different than that or anything else that I wanted to change in my life. It's this idea that this calling came, and you start doing it, and you get immersed with it, and the next thing you know, you are whatever it is, like I said, you are now this thing that you've been wanting, this change in your life, whatever it may look like, right? And so, the calling. So there's these 4 parts of this thing that's called the calling, and you can apply it to almost anything in your life. Anything is just by listening, figuring out what it is that you need to do, start taking some action, and then embody whatever the change is. And for us people here, metaphysically, we're going to dive into some of that next week because there are metaphysical components to it as well. And then the other thing I'm excited about is we've got a special guest that's going to come up and share their story about what it's meant for them to actually start listening to the calling, start discerning what it is, and then actually start taking some action. And it's a pretty cool story. I can't wait for everybody to hear. So, having said that, there's a calling that's going on right now. What are you doing about it? Are you following it? The more you listen to your soul, the more you follow what it's trying to tell you, the more you open yourself up to new possibilities and a new way of being. And I promise you that new way is going to involve more love, more freedom, more expression, more expansion than you ever could have dreamed possible. You are amazing. You are beautiful. We are all so lucky to have you here. Thank you for the light that you shine. Thank you for everything that you give. Thank you. You are so needed, so much so. We are grateful for each and every one of you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. God bless. Namaste. Namaste.
Hey, it's Reverend Mike here. I just wanted to stop for a moment before you get on with your day and thank you so much for spending time with us this morning. It means the world to us, and I just wanted to let you know if there's anything that we can do to make your experience even better, please do not hesitate to reach out by going to our website. I also wanted to offer you the opportunity for us to get together and sit down so I could get to know you a little bit better and answer any questions that you have. I can either do that by either getting together in person, have a cup of coffee, or we can meet online via Zoom. If you're interested, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can reach me at michael@courage2thrive.com. And lastly, if you find these messages are helping you, we would be tremendously grateful if you'd consider donating to the center. The best and the easiest way to do that is simple. Just go to our website. Again, thank you so much. Hope you have a great day. Hope you're doing well. God bless, and we hope to see you soon. Bye-bye now.